Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have an excellent attacking game to share with you from 1996 on the white end Judit Polgar playing against Vladimir Epishin. Alright, on board we have a Caro-Kann defense. Knight d7 signals the Karpov variation. Epishin was one of Karpov's seconds from 1987 to 1996, so I imagine quite familiar with this particular line. This knight from d7 supports the king knight development to f6. Black's now in a spot to meet knight takes with knight takes. From here it's bishop c4. And sure enough, knight g to f6. Knight g5, already going for the quick kill. Converging on f7. It's prevented with e6. And now queen to e2. So 7 moves in, we have a big focal point. e6, possible sacrifices on e6, or even f7, right around the corner for white. Black plays in this position knight b6. A way you could quickly lose as black is to say, get out of my house, knight. Well, h6 would be a blunder. Here's one example of this tactic on these light squares. Black is getting checkmated after just 11 moves. Okay, knight b6 not only hits the bishop, but now this guy supports these tricks on f7 and e6. It's there defending e6 directly. White preserves the bishop. And the follow-up here, h6, only after the bishop is supporting e6 do we have this kick of the knight. Now, keep in mind, this guy here on d4 is poison. If queen takes d4 in this position, that would run into knight f3, and then the knight gets to go to e5, and there's no defending the f7 pawn. So, poison d pawn. It's h6 here. Knight goes back, and now black challenges the most valuable pawn in the position, d4. Bishop f4. And bishop to d6. So if black tries to be greedy here, capturing this pawn, white could win it back, continue developing with queenside castles. There's no good way to support this pawn. There's a pin as well. So for instance, if bishop c5, you could take right away, meeting bishop takes knight with c3, exploiting the pin. So after bishop f4 in this game, it's simply bishop d6, bishop g3, and queen c7. So in this position now, the tension is resolved. If Polgar instead castles here, that would be a blunder because of bishop captures bishop and then c4. So this is one of the points of queen c7. Black's ready to squash the light square bishop. Okay, so the tension is resolved between the pawns, parries the c4 threat, and after queen takes pawn, now we have queenside castles. One of those cool moves. I see it as a cool move at least. Queenside castles with tempo. The bishop is now hit a second time, and after now bishop captures bishop, the other rook springs right to life. Back-to-back moves, both white rooks are now activated, and right around the corner we're going to have an opposite side's castles position. Bishop d7 is the follow-up here, and Polgar now plays rook h4, another move I really like here. At first glance, you may say to yourself, okay, Polgar's looking to form a battery on the d file. That's a possibility for sure. But what's also possible is another battery where the d1 rook goes to the h file and Polgar looks to work with what she's been given, this half-opened h file. Problems potentially on h6. In addition to these batteries being formed on the d file or the h file, there's also a defensive point behind rook h4. So this rook supports the a4 square, or defends the a4 square. Why might this be important? Well, black may try to disrupt one of the very best pieces in the position, this bishop on b3, where it's both aggressive and defensive of c2. Keep in mind, this is a half-open file for black. You can very easily see pieces stacked on the c file. The bishop is a very efficient defender of the queenside position. Now, the rook from h4 defends potentially against this idea of a5 with then a4. If a5 is played in this position, Polgar would have now, with the rook on h4, a4. And this guy is stable, will not be kicked. Okay. In this game, after rook h4, it's rook c8. Now comes knight e5, making way for the other knight to pivot on f3. Bishop b5, queen e1, and now kingside castles continue to develop. And from here, it's knight b to d5. So if instead of knight b to d5, if black tries something else, for instance, says, hey, this is an open file, let me compete for it, don't forget about the sacrifices on this f7 square. When I initially showed it, it was when black was uncastled and the king was the only defender. Well, after castles and then a king-rook move, we still have a similar situation. The king would now be the lone defender of this point. So here would be another case where white can execute a tactic on f7. This would be a blunder, rook to d8, because we could have rook takes, and then knight takes f7. I'll show a line here where we go straight to mate. We're going to see that the whole black king side is completely wiped out. Check out this variation. King here is mate. If you go like this, here we go. Everything is getting blasted apart, and we're going straight to mate. A wiped out king side. So keep in mind that trick on f7, it is still there. We got three pieces influencing these two light squares, e6 and f7. All right, in this game, it's knight b to d6, at least taming this bishop. It no longer sees e6 directly. Follow up now, king b1, very healthy. Off of this half-open file, an unpinned c-pawn now. From here, bishop c6, eyeing up potentially b5, a5, a4, disrupting the strong bishop. But now comes queen to d2. Polgar has an eye on this h6 square, looking for a sacrifice. Black continues here with rook f to e8. This opens up the f8 square for the queen to defend the king side. This is a blunder, rook f to e8. What is considered best is knight to e7, preparing to meet this doubling on the h file with a timely knight f5, hitting the rook, defending h6. Okay, in this game it's rook to e8. I was wondering a little bit about, why not move the rook to a more active square while still opening up this retreat square for the queen? I believe it's maybe to stay off of, or out of the way of, a possible pin on the d file. So for instance, Polgar could always switch gears and centralize the rook, have three major pieces stacked on the d file, and nearby there's now a c4 idea exploiting the pinned knight. So in this case, the rook stays off of this completely opened d file. And follow up here is rook d to h1. So the sacrifice on h6 in this position is not working. If Polgar goes in for it now, the queen is there. The black queen is now there just in time defending the queen to f8. Okay. In this game, it's rook on d to h1. Follow up now. Queen f8, defending h6. And now in comes g5. So instead of g5, there is a flashy move. What is considered best here is queen to g5. Pawn takes queen, you get mated. And this move is also setting up. Simply rook takes h6. The g pawn is now pinned. What would black play here? If knight h7, you could still take on h6. Knight takes queen, you get mated. What other defense might there be here for black? If king h7, check out this cool move. Knight takes f7, trying to distract the queen from h6. If queen takes knight, rook takes h6, and it will be checkmate next move. Okay, in this game, no queen g5. Did she miss her chance at a flashy move? At this point, she did. Let's continue, however. We have g5. This pawn ready to be a battering ram, smashing through at h6. Now comes knight e4. Queen e1, counterpunch. Threatening the knight, however, not directly. In the game, we continue with knight d6. Let me just make a different move. If a5 is played, you can't take the knight directly. Knight c3 check would be there and you drop the queen, but white can always first swipe the bishop and next take the piece. Okay, in this game, the knight goes back to d6. The idea to meet in g5 with knight f5, but it's too late at this point. Polgar is able to smash through, give up some material. Knight takes rook is met with an in-betweener, inserting first a check, daring black to take this pawn. Black plays in the better way, hides behind the pawn. If you take the pawn here, rook takes knight would follow, and queen to h1. What are you doing about this? Threatening not only mate, but a skewer. You're going to lose the queen and soon thereafter, the king. Okay, black tries to hide behind the pawn. But now comes knight takes knight. Deadly threat on g6. Not only mate threat, but winning the queen. Okay, how do you defend against this? In the game, it's knight to f4, defending g6. So this is an active square, knight post on f4. We're going to see that it's challenged right away when it goes here. If black tries a different path, so for instance, knight e7, a less active but more stable post for the knight, this is no good because the rook no longer defends e6 directly. Polgar would have this shot on e6, trying to distract the pawn from g6. If you take the bishop, you're going to get mated in a couple moves. Very pretty mate, this one here. So what's tried in this game, knight f4. And now in comes, remember that earlier flashy queen g5 move that wasn't played? Well, she doesn't miss her second chance at a flashy move. It's queen b4. Hitting the knight and daring black to take the queen. This queen has a responsibility to defend f7. If queen takes queen in this position, it's a checkmate in 2. Another pretty one with knight h to g6 check. The rook is now there, defending h7. And after pawn takes knight or knight takes knight, we would have mate with knight takes f7. Okay, the white queen is poisoned. The white queen is targeting the knight. If the knight moves, there's going to be a problem on g6. So what does black try? He defends the knight while also giving this king a little air. We continue with queen d4, threatening a deadly double check What do you do about that? If you move the pawn, knight's going to drop on g6. So the king goes to g7 here. Now a really nice follow-up, we have knight f5, check. What white would like to play here is knight takes f7, discovered check. But in response to this, there's king takes knight, and black is escaping. So what does knight f5 do in this position? One, unmasks the rook. We're ready for h8 promotion now. And after pawn takes knight, the move played in the game, this bishop springs to life, sees a little further. The knight and bishop coordinate directly on f7. Now, if instead of pawn takes knight, the move played in the game, black moves the king to, let's say, f6, it'll be a mate in 3. With knight d7, double check. King here, or king to g6, it's mate with queen f6. King takes knight will be a mate with queen f6 check. King here, queen e5 mate. And king g4, knight e5 mate. Okay, in this game, it is pawn captures knight. Polgar flicks in the promotion, luring the queen to a more vulnerable square. There's only one reply here, queen takes queen. And after the follow-up, knight takes f7, discovered check, black resigns. The queen will be lost next. The only thing you have to be a little careful of, after a king move, don't take with the rook. You'll get back rank mated. Yeah, queen falls with check in this position, and it's completely gone for team black. So, what did you think of this one? Anyhow, feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.